The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Welcome to your Health and Wellness Hour, sponsored by Luminosity Wellness Center here in Las Vegas, coming to you from the studios of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting. Our goal is to incite and ignite all your senses and curiosities. So sit back, relax, open your mind and your heart, and enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome to the show today, Luminosity Health and Wellness Hour. And today, Shay Sisler. I'm here today with Beverly Zeimet. Okay, and Beverly has 35 years of experience in the field of holistic. In holistic medicine. She's an author, a speaker, a trainer, a spiritual coach, and a bioenergetic practitioner who specializes in emotional transformation consulting, in exposing one's true identity and purpose in life. And we're going to get a lot more into that as we go through the day today. But to start off, I always like to start off with finding out, what is your story, Beverly? How did you get into what you do? So could you just tell us a little bit about your story?
I guess my journey, I call this journey to freedom. Mm-hmm. Okay, and basically mostly what we're going to talk about in the show today is coexisting with duality, right? And back in 1974 is where my journey started, and it was, and I'm sure some of your audience out there can even relate to this, and you maybe even relate to this, as to who really are you? Do you have your identity? Do you know who you are? Do you know what your purpose in life is? You know, and sometimes we think we know what our why is, we know what our purpose is, yet at the same time, it changes.
Yeah, all the time.
So it's finding that passion, and so for me, back in the 70s, there wasn't a lot going on. I grew up in the Midwest, and of course, there was psychology, psychiatry, and if you talked about certain things, they were ready to commit you,
Yeah, it's like, taboo things to discuss.
Exactly, and so it was like, well, what do you do? And where do you go? There was, as far as self-help books, they were like non-existent. Mm-hmm. We had Freud. Wow, we had Freud. Yes, we did. But it kind of started a whole revolution and got us to where we are here today, which is awesome, right? And so it's like feeling who am I and what is my purpose. I knew what I was, because people refer to you as what you are, your mother, your wife, you pump gas at the gas station, you write for the newspaper, or you're a babysitter, or, you work for corporate America, or whatever, right?
We always define ourselves by those labels.
Yeah, and I think that, again, we talk about the duality, right? So I think that kind of gets mixed up with the what of who you are as to the who of who you are. Mm-hmm. So finding that deep-centered who and the soul, basically, of who you are, you kind of sometimes have to move away those things that you aren't to find the things that you really are. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where my journey started and led up to this passion. And there was a lot of emotion going on. And
you're talking back in the 70s.
Oh, I'm talking back in the 70s. Okay. I was a mother of 3. Mm-hmm. My kids were born just a little over a year apart, each one. So it was like having triplets.
Wow. Yeah.
I come from a family of 11 kids, and I looked at what was going on. It's like, whoa, wait a minute here. I'm not going to be my mother. There's more to life than just this.
Yeah, 11 kids.
It's like, wow, and I mean, I kind of joke around. I had sex 3 times and I had 3 kids. Like, whoa, hello, So again, I mean, I love my children. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I really love my children, but there was more to life than what was there.
What was presented to you at that time.
I had so much anger And I mean, I was angry at the world, you know, and it again, when I started to understand this, and I started just really kind of soul searching and talking to my God, you know, and my higher self. Now that might be a question, you know, maybe some of your audience has, or even you have, about higher self.
What is your higher self? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll explore that.
Yeah, we can do that, and it's that soul essence of who you are, you know, and there was a lot of things that I was going through that I didn't have these words associated with, and I knew of one thing, and that was the thing that kept me and drove me to get to where I am, and it was 3 words: mind over matter.
And how did you figure out those 3 words? I mean,
to this day, this is what's so ironic. I have no clue where those words come from. You know, I have searched in every part of who I was. You know, did somebody say that to me? Did I read it somewhere? I don't know. But it was like I something in me knew that the mind was so powerful that you could conquer anything.
You could get
anything.
Control of that, or understand it. Maybe not control, it's not a good word, but just understand how the mind works.
Exactly. And again, well, we had psychiatry and psychology and Freud, you know, and it's like, okay. But for me, it was, I really needed to get through the anger that I had as a child, and some of the depression, and vying for time. And I really feel that a lot of what happened as a child, I mean, I was never sick. I never gave myself permission to get sick. Wow. Well, the only time I got mom or dad's attention was when everybody else was sick, right? No. So it's like when all my brothers and sisters are sick, wow, it's just me, you know? Yeah. And so, you know, looking back and knowing what I know now about how energy works and the mind works and the power, you know, to generate things like that, and the power of the spoken word, right, is like, well, you have well and you have sick. Well, if I could overpower the wellness with the sick, then I was well and they were all sick, and so I had I mean, I was, you know, this is kind of embarrassing to say, but I was an instigator, you know. And we do things to gain, you know, insight and into what we want,
right?
You know, and I never viciously hurt anyone, you know, but I did. I really feel that I kind of made everybody, you know, get the flu. Okay. Yeah, you know, so that.
Well, did you like send voodoo to them or something?
You know, I don't even.
How did that happen?
you know, I'm not even sure how that was. You know, it's just you know, again the psychology behind some of that, you know, that gets spoken. You know, it's cold season. Right. It's cold and flu season. You know, I mean, we had that going no matter when.
Those seeds in the brain.
Exactly. So everybody was supposed to get sick. It's like, well, good idea. You guys all get sick, you know, and then I won't get sick and I'm good. You know, of course I had to go give them their, you know, medicine, feed them and everything else, you know, whatever. But still, it was undivided attention, you know, and so attention gets got however you can get it. And I think that was
kids.
Yeah,
you would do that,
and I was second oldest, you know, so it wasn't like I was the little one getting the attention. But again, it's part of that whole duality world, I think, and I kind of learned that. And we talk about the higher self, the subconscious. I think everybody knows about the subconscious, maybe more reference to the inner child. Right.
And some of the people in my world I know don't even understand what the inner child is. So what is the inner child? Can you just explain that? I mean, I don't want to get off your story either, but
I mean, that's part of the whole thing. I mean, we all, you know, everyone's story is pretty much the same. We all have a pain point.
Yeah.
You know, and we all have failures and we all have successes, you know, and it's just the faces and the names and the places change.
It's
you know, so
we all have those childhood stories.
Exactly.
That we had to endure.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, so you take a look at what's in your database now. You know, you've been through a lot of years of growing and reading and hearing and interacting. So your knowledgeable database gets fed a lot of stuff. Well, as a child growing up, you're taking in all of that stuff into your database, right? And so then what happens is you kind of take and cut and paste it and try to understand it and put it into some kind of perspective, something that you can understand, and that becomes your truth. That becomes your reality, because you can only decipher what you know with, right? And then it's as you mature and you learn more and more things get into that database. So we have all these old outdated programs, we have these old habits, and these are what gets stored in the subconscious and in the cell memory, which is that part of you that takes you into fight or flight. Right? And it's all those old built stories that we all have.
Right.
Well, they rule us.
Right. And I'm assuming they ruled you from your
childhood, my goodness,
so.
They did. I mean, and like I said, I was talking about that anger. And it just really, really, I mean, I had a fuse like this big. And I was short. I was shorter than everybody, so I grew up fighting. And I think that also kind of intensified my anger. Right? So I was just constantly fighting. And I reached a point in my adult life that I don't want to fight anymore. There's got to be more to life than this. I can't go off on people, and I started feeling anger and hatred towards my dad, and so I started walking. I literally, once the kids were in bed, and their dad was, in the house, I would just take off and I'd start walking down the gravel roads, under the stars. And I started screaming and kicking dirt and throwing rocks. I didn't know what else to do.
Letting out all that anger that you had built up.
Yeah, and I started speaking out loud. And I kind of teach this in the work that I do is learning how to listen to yourself. So speaking out loud is completely different than hearing your thoughts. Because when you listen to your thoughts, you get in trouble. You don't get paid to think. Oh my goodness. So when you start verbalizing, that it just really, really changes.
Wow.
And the more I did that, and again, it goes back to those 3 words, mind over matter, right? It's like, well, now this is really, really interesting. And it's like, okay, if I have all this anger at my dad, do I really hate my dad, because there's some of the words I heard.
You're having this conversation out loud with yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. And saying, I hate you, Dad, right? and then when I'm hearing this, and it's like, I don't hate my dad. I love my dad. He's my dad, right? And there's so many great things about him. So why do I have this anger and this vengeance of hatred? And so I started really thinking about that. And what it boils down to is the action that my father took created a reaction in me. I didn't like his action that made me react this way. So who was I angry at?
You're angry at yourself.
Hello.
For the reaction.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. So it all comes back to the self. Right. It really does.
Everything that we do out there, it does. We have to look at ourselves. It's not other people projecting their will or their thoughts on us or their actions. It's how we react or perceive what they're saying or doing or telling us.
Right.
It really
so,
is.
And everything in life is what? It's an action and a reaction. It's a cause and effect. So we get back into that whole duality thing. And so for me, that became a real study, my own personal study on the whole duality of everything.
Wow.
So, okay, how could I love my dad and hate my dad at the same time? Well, because I really loved my dad for the person he was. And the anger and the hate come from his action. that I responded to. And I perceived that way because of what? Because of the database that I put into me, that I cut and pasted as meaning this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that became my truth.
Right.
Well, it wasn't my conscious truth.
Mm-hmm.
It was my false truth. Because back then it was truth. And that's where you've got to meet it. And so that kind of laid the basis to the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And developing techniques over the years so that the regurgitation and the reliving of that past
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to impact what's going on right now. But we talk about that subconscious
Mm-hmm.
that's buried in that cell memory of that false truth. It comes back and it just kind of like bites you in the backside when you least expect it.
Mm-hmm.
So now here you are, it's like, okay, I'm going to grab this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to recognize as soon as somebody trips my trigger, I'm not going to respond that way. Right? And you fight it, right? And it's like, okay, not going there, I'm not going there, right? And so you're putting out as much effort as you can to just not go there. Sometimes you can conquer it and other times you can't. And then maybe a little piece of it will actually take over. Or you find yourself after you leave it, you start backstepping. And it's like, oh my gosh, did I hurt somebody's feelings? I didn't want to make them feel bad. And that takes us into justification, making excuses, finding reasonings for things. Do you see this whole crazy cycle we get on?
Oh, I know. It is crazy.
Oh.
We do that.
So it was developing techniques to be able to detach from the feeling, because emotions are always there. Mm-hmm. Emotions will never go away.
That's part of being human.
Yeah,
is having those emotions.
Yeah, and the emotion, it is an element by itself. It's what we feed into the emotion. Mm-hmm. We can put a negative charge into emotion, or we can put a positive charge into the emotion, right? And then the intensity in which we feel it is, do we go ballistic, right? Are we elated with joy, right? Or are we elated with sadness? So it's all those things. But one thing you have to remember in this world of duality, you can never be on both sides of the fence at the same time. You can't be happy and sad at the exact same time. Mm-hmm. You can be both, but not at the same time. So you want to do a little experiment here?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but we'll see.
Let's kind of play with happy and sad.
Okay.
Okay, I want you to think of a time in your life that made you sad.
Oh gosh, we all have many of those. I have one of those.
Okay. How does that make your overall body feel? I mean, how do you feel when you feel sad?
You want to cry, you feel frumpy, you feel heavy, depressed.
Okay.
When you're sad, you just kind of don't feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
It's like the sun is not shining as brightly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting watching your body language when you started to describe that. And body language speaks louder than words. Mm-hmm. It's like 47% of a conversation is body language. Mm-hmm. 7% is the word. 7%. Right. And then the tone of the voice sets the rest of it, right? Mm-hmm. So the key element is choosing your words is one thing. It's choosing the form in which you deliver it is another.
Right.
And then how your body speaks it.
Wow. Another aspect of it.
And all that is done unconsciously, which is what through that subconscious.
Yeah. You're not even aware of.
Exactly. And that's what stores all of these things. So when you're talking about sadness, your whole demeanor, everything shifted, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a comfortable place to be.
No.
But sometimes we find ourselves, it's almost like we want to make ourselves stay there because we're trying to punish ourselves or something, right? Or an event happens.
Some people use that for attention too, though.
Oh gosh.
Like if I'm sad or, then people are going to ask me what's wrong. So we use that.
Exactly. It can be an attention getter. Yeah, you bet. And so as you talk about that, and then you say, oh, there's not as much sunshine, and all of a sudden your whole demeanor is starting to perk up. Your shoulders went back, you sat up straight, you got a smile on your
sunshine.
face. Exactly. So when you're feeling happy,
Right.
your whole demeanor, your eyes smile, your face smiles, your whole body, everything shifts, right? So try to be happy and sad at the same time.
Yeah, you can't.
It's like
it's just not
happy, sad, happy, sad, happy. Oh, forget it, right?
Yeah.
So it's that coexisting with the duality that makes that huge difference, and is to recognizing the duality of it and where you're keeping yourself and at what end of the spectrum, right? So when you can coexist with duality and kind of bring it into that center rather than being way over here at the extremes on either side, right? Your pendulum is going to swing. You're going to be able to recognize triggers that get tripped in you. You're going to be responding differently to others, right? And there are techniques out there, and there's a lot of techniques out there that work to help undetonate or defuel the emotion, shall we say.
Right.
So the feeling of that sadness, the sadness is, is just a word. It's just a word. But you're attaching all these feelings of sad face, droopy body, all of that kind of stuff. Right? Right. And the same way with happiness. Happiness is just a word that you're going to fuel it with feeling good and all that kind of stuff, right? Right. So understanding duality helps you to coexist with it and know on which side of the fence you want to be on.
So let me ask you this. On your journey, when you were trying to be where you are today, where did you come up with the duality? Where did you find that? Or where did you figure that piece out? How did you know to tap into that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough question.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think there was just like one thing, that happened. I made a move in the late 70s, and I packed up my kids and moved to Denver, Colorado. From little farm country, Iowa, to Denver, Colorado. And left everything behind me, including my kids' dad. I didn't need 4 kids. I had 3. 3 was enough, right? And it just started life all over. And at that point, again, seeking what there was more of. And my older sister lived out there, and she opened up her home to me for a while, to get me on my feet and whatever. So I spent a few months with her. And she had known a few friends who were kind of in some of this early stages of energy work. Like Silva Mind Control was just coming out then.
Right.
And that had a lot to do with psychic work and energy healing and what some of that stuff was. And she introduced me to 2 people who started listening to my story, shall we say, and watching some of the stuff that I was doing. And that was the first time I heard the word psychic. It's like, oh my gosh, what is that? Does that have anything to do with psychology? It's like, well, not really.
Right.
And so I would have to say that influence that these gentlemen had on me started moving me into the whole spiritual development and really understanding the subconscious, the consciousness, and the superconsciousness, the high self, middle self, low self, all of these things, the inner child, the soul essence of who you are, your conscious awareness of what you're existing in the world today. So there's a lot of different descriptions of that. And going through the Silva Mind Control method really helped me to perfect what I knew I did. And that's kind of looking back in time that I could honestly say, like what I shared with you, I really think I must have made my brothers and sisters sick so I could have that attention, I mean, it's like, okay, I was like, well, that wasn't a very pretty thing to, but again, it's looking at what those truths are.
Right.
And working through some of those issues and stuff, and then more self-help books come out, and Wayne Dyer was a mentor of mine. I think you mentioned him.
I have listened to Wayne Dyer since early 80s.
Yeah.
He has been one of my very favorite authors, and I was really sad when he passed away.
Yeah.
Recently, so.
Yeah.
I still, to this day, I read all of his books. I get the audio, because there's so much to learn from him, and he didn't really start out as a spiritual
No,
leader.
he didn't.
Yeah, so he's kind of developed into that, which is kind of what's happened to myself.
Exactly.
Developing into that too, and it sounds like you developed into your
I did.
spiritual.
I did, and Wayne Dyer played a huge role in that.
Yeah.
He really did. His philosophies, as you would call it, theories, the directions. It's how I felt. That was my life. I would read his books, and it would give me confirmation of events that had just transpired in my life. And the things that he was saying was my truth and my belief, and so it was putting those pieces together. So he was definitely a mentor of mine, and I opened up to coaching, through him. And so we all are looking for that mentorship, and someone who we can help guide us through things and help understand things, because, the world we live in, and again, this world of duality and the extremes that we have, it kind of became, I guess, maybe a niche of mine, shall we say, as to looking to reach, because it was what I was searching for. You're asking me, how did I get here? And my deepest soul searching was to find my true identity and purpose in life, and clearing away the disasters, because the duality, again, the depression that I found myself on, in, and the anger, all of that had me at the edge of suicide.
Wow.
So the extremes of the duality there had me at that space. Then when you look at the opposite of the dualities and the growth and the fulfillment of purpose, and finding the who of who you are, can take you from the destruction into the growth, right? So it's how you perceive things. So as a child, you perceive all of these old beliefs and experiences as your truth, because that's exactly what they are.
Right.
In that moment.
Time. Yeah.
And it's that recognition of it. So whenever you're looking to have a growth and a direction, it's understanding the previous truth that's ruling your life, and then preventing it to rule your life at that point. And the techniques that have been developed over the years, and the skills and the mindset, those are three key elements, skills and mindset, right? And tools. Systems work.
Right.
People don't.
Well, and is that how you came up with where the classes that you offer, the teachings, just from all the experiences and the things that you read, and so from that, then you created many different courses, right?
Exactly.
What are some of those courses that you're offering?
Well, I got one currently coming up here on the 25th of May, and it's a launch here, so it's a whole new world here, compared to what it was years ago, when you just put a little ad in the paper, and people came, and exactly. Not so much anymore. So I do have a live event, an actual put your little body in the seat and
Okay.
and come in and join us. And again, we talk about the duality. A synergism is created in a room full of people. It's just like, you and I sitting here in a conversation. There's a different synergism because we can interact and we can feel each other's,
Right.
energy. We can watch each other's body movements and things,
Because
right?
communication,
Exactly.
again, like you said,
Exactly. And we've kind of lost that. Technology's great, but again, there's something to be said about that one-on-one touch. People need people and they need that touch. Text messaging doesn't bring into life that form of energy.
Right.
Even a phone call doesn't bring in that form of energy. Video is the big thing these days.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is? Do you have any idea, Shay, why video seems to be like taking off like it does?
No, I have no idea why that is.
Okay.
Why is that?
Well, when you look at video, you're actually watching a person or people interacting. So now it's kind of brought that people skill together, right? And people are interacting. So they can interact with a live video, just like the show here today. Okay? They're interacting with us, hearing, right? And then it's my understanding that once the live show gets out there again, there will be a video to go with it, right?
Right.
Look at all your music, your country western, your jazz, your rock, they're doing and have been putting their songs to video,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I know I love to watch video. I don't like to watch TV. But I
you
love to watch video.
Yeah, it's more that personal one-on-one with who's ever on that video, right? So it's bringing back some of that union. Any workshop or classes, because you have a lot of online classes and stuff like that, and I've got those available too.
Okay.
The class to me, though, that element I think is still very important. So taking this mini class, it's 3 hours, to where you're going to go in deeper with what we're talking about here. And I'm actually going to give you, give 5 steps to take
in the class.
There'll be
Gotcha.
the 5 steps that I have found that have been so powerful that work with the mindset and the skill and the tools. Those 5 steps will help your journey and move through defueling, these emotions and eliminating that false truth so that you can start putting in that conscious truth of what you know today. Because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's our experiences, and it's the reading, the listening, the conversations that give us what we believe is our truth today. But the past has been there longer,
Right.
and
so
they've got a lot. And they got a lot more fuel, and it's like they vie for the time, and they've been there. So, so it's like they just kind of take over. So when you understand, how that philosophy works, there's ways of eliminating that. So taking an online course is great, but following up or starting out with just kind of a little mini sneak preview type of class that will give you some insight into what's happening in these classes and stuff. You're going to get that synergism with the people that are there. You're also going to get one-on-one attention. And this little mini class that I'm offering, Journey to Freedom, Coexisting with Duality, is limited to 50 tickets. Right?
So it's a limited.
Yeah.
So if you want to get in there, they need to get in there soon.
Exactly.
Because when the class fills up,
when the tickets are gone, they're gone. Yeah, and I don't know when I'm going to be back in Vegas because, I shared with you I'm going to be on the road doing this.
Right.
And the neat thing about that, having a small class like that, is you're going to get one-on-one attention with that synergism that doesn't happen on on an online course when you're all by yourself, or say, well, you know what, well, I'm going to do it with a friend. Well, what happens when the friend peters out or doesn't?
You're stuck doing it by yourself.
Or it's like, oh, I know we're supposed to do this tonight, but I can't make it. We go again back to what? Those excuses, reasoning, justification. What side of the fence is that on? And why do we do things like that? Because people fear change.
They
right?
do. And that's the one constant in the world. In our earthly existence here.
Yes.
Is change. And it is the hardest thing for people to adjust to.
And that's only hard because we've created that and we've stored that.
It's mind over matter.
Exactly. Yeah, and it really is. It really is. And thank you for pointing that out. So what are you going to do? Right? It's where do you go from here? Yeah. So we make excuses to justify not having to do or take responsibility for, what are we willing to give up to gain?
Right.
And how committed are we? And it all starts here with the self, because if you don't start in here, it doesn't work out here. It just doesn't. No. We're a reflection of everyone else. So, and again, you look at some of those things that irritate you personally, and you kind of holding fault and you're kind of passing blame or judgment on that other person. It's like, it goes back to the same thing I felt with my dad, right?
Yeah.
It's my reaction to an action.
Yeah.
Right? So recognize your actions. To someone else's action, because that's your reaction, because how you react to their action, they're going to react to your action, and wow, things can spiral out of nowhere, or you can stop them. It's that recognition. You got to recognize it,
that's what's happening,
that's what's happening, to stop that spiral. And it seems like that spiral that goes this way, those things get out of hand like really, really fast. Right?
Yeah.
Because we go on the defense. We want to be right. And we're going to justify that we're right no matter what, because that's what it says in our false truth. Right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is like a crazy, vicious world we live in, isn't it?
It is. And I remember the first time somebody said to me that whatever you're projecting out in the world, you're mirroring it back. I mean, you're getting it back. And I did not understand that. And I did not. And I'm like, how could that be true? I mean, I was really nice. Why are they being mean to me, And then when you really start to understand it, then you see how it all connects and how it all works. And it's totally amazing to me.
It's be on guard, know when that trigger gets tripped. Right? So the importance of being in a class setting, especially a small class setting, I mean, if you're in a class with 1,000 people, are you going to get that personal touch? Not so much, right? Not so much. So there's a lot to be said about being in a small group, and that's kind of what I want to bring back, is that synergism of energy, and help people really start that understanding, then work into an online class. That course that you can do over a period of so many weeks, you're going to get so much more out of it. And then do a follow-up of maybe a 2-day workshop or something, which builds on that much more. So when you're looking at your spiritual growth, this is what you were talking about, is moving up those stair steps. You can do it in a way that you're going to gain the greatest out of the whole thing. And that's kind of how I format what I do to help people. So with this little class that's coming up on the 25th, it's to do just that. And with those 50 tickets, you're going to get an extra ticket. And with that ticket, you can bring someone, pay it forward, or bring someone that's going to be emotional support for you, and you can kind of be an emotional support for one another, and that's, again, what brings that to the whole of everyone, right? And there's also another bonus that you're going to get for registering. I have a little book called Finding the Key. And in finding the key is going to explain those 5 steps that I mentioned that will go, go over in the class.
Right.
And help you to really clear away all of that old programming from your past, right?
Oh, good.
Yeah,
So,
that's part of the skills and the mindset that you'll develop through this course. When you walk out of there, you'll be able to do something right there on the spot. So it's not like, oh, I feel good now and I can go home. You have the tools
Right.
and the skills and the mindset to start making a difference. Exactly. Yeah, and then you bring a friend, which is kind of cool because then they
Then
can,
you can work on
be
those
that
things together.
support. Exactly.
So-
Yeah. So,
So how many books have you written? And are most of your books in line with that as well? Or
the majority of them are. I'm going to be launching one here right after this little course is finished, probably sometime in June. It's called The Fear Factor. And that will take you really in depth and give you a clear understanding of what we touched on with the subconscious and the superconscious and the consciousness, and how and where all those emotions are stored throughout your body, in what areas. And so
wow.
it's kind of, it's really, really deep. And then and it's a small book. It's maybe 120 pages, right? It's a fast read and a deep read. And then a third book that'll come out probably following in August is Science of the Mind, which is the science behind this whole thing. And that also leads into deeper classes that get into the energy work and the energy body of who you are, because we're energy, and we talked about,
Right.
We talk about emotions, we talk about feelings, but they're charged with energy, right? And it's that energy that either makes you dysfunctional or functional, right? Again, the duality. So are you going to operate over here in dysfunction and chaos, or are you going to come over here into strengths and power, right?
and your books help move you from
They
one
do.
spectrum to the other.
They do. They. It's kind of like baby steps. Give me your hand here. We're going to go through this first, so you've got that understanding and start to recognize that stored false truth and what you can do to start eliminating. The more of that you start eliminating, the awareness starts to really open, and you start to get hungry. You really start to get hungry, so that when you start reading The Fear Factor, it's going to start making so much more sense.
Right.
And then the tools and that you have leaving this 3-hour class is going to start picking up the pace big time.
Good.
And even in the Fear Factor, there's even deeper clearing techniques in there that you can use.
Right. And one thing I want to say about the fear, because I do past life regression, and when people are fearful of things, that actually causes disease in the body. And a lot of people don't know that they can clear that up and heal themselves within their body just because they're afraid of something. Like if you're afraid of getting cancer, you can actually create cancer within your body, but then you can fix it, you can clear it up. And so when I go into past life regression, then they a lot of times will get information about why they have a certain disease or clarification on that. So in your work, is there, like, how does fear affect?
Well, let's go back over to the first 3 words that I shared with you: mind over matter. Right? So the mind is powerful. What runs a discord in the body can be put back into perfection. Because, God does not create anything other than perfection. So this vessel that your soul of perfection is maneuvering around in our crazy world of duality, right? Because we were given free will. So you have the free will to make the choices in the duality world, of what you want, so here's another scenario in the picture, right? And it's learning that discernment. So it's really learning how to discern, and discerning is taking caution. So when you look at the cautionary measures of what's going on in your physical vessel and start to understand where those discomforts lie, right? And what's making your body run amok? What are the emotions that are attached to it? So fear actually lives in the kidneys. Interesting, huh?
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and fear is what builds on one side of the duality, and love is what builds on the other side of duality, right? And love lives in the heart chakra, or in the heart itself.
Right.
Right? So those who are suffering maybe from heart-related issues, maybe have a lot of relationship sadness in their life, right? Working with fear issues also are combined, like I said, they're in the kidney, that's holding on to old garbage, out of fear of letting it go, but it destroys. Anger lives in the liver, you know.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so when you say
explain all that in your book.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So listen to some of the slang we use. It's like, man, I'm just really pissed off, right? Oh, well, that's kind of it's a piece of anger, right? But anger can also turn into rage. And what color is your liver? It's red. Right? And the color of anger is
red.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you look at these things, and you start to understand, and that's what the fear factor goes into, and it explains which organs store which emotions. And it's like bitterness. Bitterness is stored in the pancreas.
That's interesting.
Lack of sweetness, and so blood sugar issues stem out of the pancreas. Well, if there's not enough sweetness in the life, right, due to bitterness, right? So it's a fascinating world to get into.
And so you found all that through research, I'm assuming?
I did. I'm a homeopathic as well. And I've worked as a massage therapist and stuff like that, So I've studied so many different modalities that have given me a conglomeration of 30 years experience. And I never asked someone else to do what I already haven't gone through.
Right.
And it's like, you're at an advantage. What took me 35 years to get here.
Right. I'm just coming in now and learning, and it's like, wow, all you guys paved the way for the rest of us.
Yeah, and so the techniques that are out there and stuff. I mean, you can eliminate in 5 minutes what took me 5 years.
Right.
So and this is what makes the work so much fun to do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to wrapping up the show, but I would like you to maybe tell our listeners and viewers out there what it is that you, besides this class that you offer them. You have information on your website, right? And you do personal consultations. So
I do.
Could you maybe just give us some information on how they would get a hold of you? Maybe some other things that
you can do? And I believe the gentleman here who's running the show is going to put some links.
He'll put your business information at the bottom.
Okay, so people can find that.
Yeah.
I can be reached at these are just letters, irmentoring.com. That's my website. So irmentoring.com. And that stands for Identity Revelation. So
okay, well, that's good to know. So.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of information on there. You can also email me.
Okay.
And again, it's irmentoring@gmail.com. If you have questions or anything. The class, if you want to join us at the class, it's HTTPS, 2 little slashes. Sally, HTTPS because it's secured. So HTTPS : // www.gl/3 and then all capital letters H, the number 9, IAV.
Okay.
And like I said, your gentleman here is going to have that buried, and so you can take a look
Okay.
at that. And
And the free consultations, what are you counseling people on their business?
it's we can talk about health, we can talk about relationships,
Okay.
we can talk about finances.
Okay.
And those are usually the 3 biggest subjects people have issues with.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's all in that duality. It's getting rid of that false truth
Right.
so that you can move into the abundance that the world has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
You can move into a healthier state, as we started talking about, and frame of mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can be in a relationship with yourself that becomes healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And is going to be an expression of the relationships out there. So, just email me if you're interested. Check my website out. Definitely join me at
On your seminar.
in that little class.
Yeah,
that would be
coming up.
awesome. And we have a lot of fun things to share. And so. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. It was a treat.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. We want to get out to our community, the people who are out there who are trying to create health and wellness in our community.
Right.
So that's what our guests
Thus,
are all about. So
Luminosity Wellness, right?
Luminosity Wellness Center. So we appreciate you
Exactly.
being here with us today, and thank you. And we look forward to programs next week. So thank you, and namaste. Thank you.
Thank you.